Bonjour et bienvenue à toutes et à tous en salle de presse pour notre rendez-vous virtuel et en direct sur EBS. Nous sommes aujourd'hui le jeudi 17 septembre. Vous avez sans doute suivi avec attention le discours sur l'état de l'Union de la présidente Mme von der Leyen hier au Parlement européen et je vous invite à consulter tous les différents matériels de presse que nous avons publiés à cet égard, qui sont à votre disposition en ligne sur la page web dédiée et sur notre coin presse. Dans le contexte de ce discours et des discussions qui ont eu lieu au collège le mardi, nous vous offrons aujourd'hui et demain une série d'événements de presse sur des initiatives clés. Nous commençons immédiatement après cette réunion de midi avec une conférence de presse du vice-président exécutif Frans Timmermans et de la commissaire Kadri Simpson sur le plan de la communication pour renforcer l'ambition climatique de l'UE à l'horizon 2030, suivi par un briefing technique sur le même sujet. Et pour cette raison, je vais limiter notre réunion de midi à une demi-heure, aujourd'hui exceptionnellement. Puis demain, nous aurons d'abord la vice-présidente Vera Jourova et la commissaire Helena Dalli, ici en salle de presse, pour vous présenter le plan d'action de l'UE contre le racisme, aussi a priori aux alentours de 12h30. Et ensuite, nous vous offrirons un peu plus tard une conférence de presse de la vice-présidente exécutive Margrethe Vestager et du commissaire Thierry Breton sur le paquet décennie numérique, superordinateur et connectivité. I'd now like to pass the floor to Johannes, who has positive news to share on the green front. Johannes.
Yes, thank you, Eric. And indeed, today we have good news to share with you on the Commission's support to financing the green transition, and of course also in support of the President's announcement to step up our climate ambition for 2030. The Commission is launching a call over €1 billion for research and investment, research and innovation projects that respond to the climate crisis and help protect Europe's ecosystems and biodiversity. The funding will also support Europe's recovery from the coronavirus crisis by turning the challenges we face in the twin green and digital transitions into opportunities for innovation. The €1 billion for this new Green Deal call comes from Horizon 2020. The call will open tomorrow morning, and as always, we have more information available for you in the daily news item and press release.
Johannes, now over to Marta for an announcement on the Recovery and Resilience Facility, on which we already offered you a technical briefing this morning. Marta.
Oui, bonjour. La Commission a défini aujourd'hui des orientations stratégiques pour la mise en œuvre de la facilité pour la reprise et la résilience dans sa stratégie annuelle pour une croissance durable pour 2021. Cette facilité est l'instrument clé de la relance au cœur de Next Generation EU, qui aidera l'Union à sortir plus forte et plus résistante de la crise actuelle. Elle apportera un soutien financier sans précédent de 672,5 milliards d'euros sous forme de prêts et de subventions qui sera crucial pour les premières années de la reprise. La Commission encourage les États membres à proposer des projets d'investissement et de réforme phares pour atteindre les objectifs des transitions écologiques et numériques. Et bien évidemment, de plus amples informations sont disponibles sur notre site, dans notre communiqué de presse et notre mémo. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Marta. Cela clôture nos annonces pour aujourd'hui. Nous sommes prêts à passer à vos questions. Et je vois que David a levé sa main. Bonjour, David.
Oui, bonjour Eric, David Carretta, Radio Radicale. Je voulais te demander rapidement deux clarifications par rapport au discours de la présidente hier à propos des passages sur la Russie. Première clarification, la position de la Commission sur Nord Stream, parce que on a eu différentes lectures. Est-ce que le fait d'avoir un gazoduc avec la Russie, il faut l'abandonner ou pas aux yeux de la Commission après le cas Navalny? Et est-ce que l'Union européenne a un rôle à jouer, vu que le gouvernement allemand dit on veut en parler avec l'Union européenne, et le haut représentant dit non, nous, c'est pas notre affaire. Et deuxième question, c'est à propos du régime des sanctions, le Magnitsky Act européen. Il est déjà en discussion au Conseil. Pourquoi la Commission veut faire une proposition sur cela? Merci.
Merci beaucoup, David. Sur ta première question, la présidente a fait une remarque hier, un commentaire de nature politique, sur le fait que ce n'était pas la conclusion d'un projet d'infrastructure qui allait changer l'attitude de la Russie en fonction des attentes des pays européens. C'était ça la nature de son commentaire. Elle n'a pas fait d'annonce supplémentaire. Tu parles du rôle de la Commission. Effectivement, la Commission a un rôle précis en ce qui concerne l'approbation des conditions dans lesquelles un projet d'infrastructure gazier de ce type peut être faite. Et nous avons déjà eu l'occasion ici à de très nombreuses reprises par la voix de Tim de vous expliquer quelles étaient les mesures que la Commission avait prises par rapport aux conditions dans lesquelles le projet Nord Stream 2 pourrait être mis en œuvre en Europe. En ce qui concerne le Magnitsky Act, je passe la parole à Nabila, qui va te donner de plus amples informations.
Oui, bonjour David, j'espère que tu vas bien. Pour ce qui est du Magnitsky Act, en fait, ce qu'a dit la présidente, c'est que les droits de l'homme sont extrêmement importants, d'autant plus avec ce qui s'est passé dernièrement et comme tu l'as vu en Biélorussie, mais pas uniquement. Les droits de l'homme sont, comme elle a dit en anglais, je le répète, increasingly being challenging. Comme tu le sais, nous avons une proposition de EU Global Human Rights Sanction Regime qui est en discussion au Conseil et qui est en progression et qui sera adoptée le plus vite possible. Et c'est ce dont la présidente parlait dans son discours. Donc, je n'ai pas plus à dire sur des discussions qui sont justement en cours en ce moment au Conseil.
Merci Nabila. Y a-t-il d'autres questions sur ces sujets pour Nabila? Alors je vois que Hans a sa main levée, donc une question relations extérieures sur ces sujets. Hans. Hans, press speak, please.
Yes, Eric, hello. I have a question relating back on the comment you just made on the pipeline and Nord Stream 2. I mean, the president spoke yesterday about Navalny and spoke about the pattern we have seen in Georgia and Ukraine, Syria, Salisbury, and she said this pattern is not changing and no pipeline will change that. As understood, this comment was made in a way that an infrastructure project will not influence Russia's behavior. But it is not really clear to me how this comment should be understood. So concretely, does it mean the Commission President is in favor of abandoning the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, or does she say the opposite? That is not really clear from your answer. Thank you.
Hans, the President made a very specific comment, which I'm not going to overinterpret or comment here in detail. She basically said, you have, as you quite rightly say yourself, a pattern of behavior. On the other hand, you have an infrastructure project. And believing that the second is going to influence the first is mistaken. That is what she said, and that is exactly what she wanted to say. And I have nothing more to add on that. Other questions on this issue, on foreign affairs related issues? Lawrence, please go ahead. Lawrence, press speak, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, great. So I wanted to come back to both of these. it is. I mean, the president included it in her State of the Union address yesterday. This is not some off-the-cuff remark. She decided to mention Nord Stream, and she clearly was not saying that it will not make any difference, and therefore we don't need to worry about it. She was clearly saying it will not make any difference to Putin's behavior, and therefore we should reconsider it. If you're going to throw it out there, if the president is going to raise this issue in her State of the Union address, it seems ridiculous, not just to be clear, not ridiculous of you, perhaps ridiculous. Not to be clear, what she's saying here, she's very clearly inferring that there is a debate about this again in Germany now, and that Nord Stream 2 is not helpful. I also have a question on Magnitsky, back for Nabila. Borrell said he would push this, the Magnitsky Act, or whatever you want to call it, in December, in his first Foreign Affairs Council meeting. Nothing has moved forward on it so far, which is whatever, 10 months later. I understand, and perhaps Nabila can confirm, that the complexity here is whether you can have an EU regulation which includes a travel ban, and that is rather than a common foreign policy decision that includes a travel ban. Is that correct? Is that what the technical difficulty or political difficulty is here? And when will this legislative proposal come?
Thank you, Norman. On your question related to the President's comments with regards to the situation or the pattern of behavior of Russia and the gas pipeline Nord Stream 2, you used two words which I think are spot on. You say, she said that it was not helpful. That is, I think, exactly the way you can understand those comments. This is what I said in my answer to the first question. What she was saying is, those who believe that having such a pipeline in place will be a way to change Russia's behavior do not understand this pattern of behavior from Russia. And indeed, this pipeline is not going to have any effect. It will not be helpful in changing Russia's behavior. She was making a political statement on this, which I think has been perfectly understood indeed by you in the context in which it was given. In terms of action, now different actors have got different responsibilities. The Commission's responsibility is to look at how infrastructure projects can operate in Europe in respect of the law. This is a distinct discussion from the political discussion which is out there. And there, as Tim has explained many times here, the Commission has made sure that this project, like any other, must comply with the rules that apply for infrastructure projects in the energy sector in Europe. On the Magnitsky Act, I go back to Nabila.
Yes, Lawrence. I mean, indeed, you're right. Following the announcement by the HRVP Borrell in December 2019, reflecting political agreement on the EU's new global human rights sanction regime, which will target serious human rights abuses and violations worldwide, are progressing well. Once the legal acts have subsequently been agreed by the member states, they will be adopted by the Council. And you know very well how it works when it comes to this, and the regime will enter into force. Now, when it comes to you know very well that when it comes to discussions happening inside the council, it is extremely difficult for me to tell you what is the problem or why is it that it's not moving as fast as you would want it to move. But things are going into the right track. All involved are working extremely hard to ensure that the sanctions regime is up and running, and it will be there as soon as possible. This is what I can say, and I'm sorry I cannot go further than that.
Thank you. Lawrence, you have a follow-up.
Just for you, Nabila's answer was clear. So it is not, Nord Stream 2 is not helpful, is your interpretation, but she was not saying that Nord Stream 2 is unhelpful.
Look, I think that the words of the
Because
president
she clearly was.
were extremely clear. She said, those who think that by finalizing such an infrastructure project, you are going to change the nature, the pattern of behavior of Russia, are wrong. I mean, to me, that is crystal clear language. Now, that is the situation there in terms of the political assessment of the value of an infrastructure project, in terms of influencing a third country's behavior on a certain number of concerns that the EU has. This is what she was saying. This is obviously distinct from the powers in the hands of the Commission when it comes to determining the conditions under which an infrastructure project can operate in Europe. I cannot make it more clear than that, Lawrence. So I see there are many hands raised, I believe, still on the issue of international relations. I now move to Nick. Nick, please. Nick is on, oh, sorry, Nick, it's on Brexit, so we'll try to come back to you a bit later. Marina, you have a question on international relations.
Yeah, I have a question on international relations, but it's for Peter regarding the dialogue Belgrade and Pristina. Can I go? So, Peter, my question for you, Peter, is why EU suddenly changed its policy not to comment on the talks that are going on in Brussels. So since yesterday we saw the comment from Mr. Lajčák on updated agenda, as you mentioned, and how come the topics can be changed in front of the dialogue when the EU as a main facilitator said that the agenda is something that is actually agreed but by both sides. So this change of agenda is not agreed by the Serbian side. And on the third thing is why association of Serbian municipalities is still not implemented 7 years after the agreement on this, and we are still talking about this. So how can we actually think about anything that goes on in this dialogue as valid after this kind of failure? Thank you.
Thank you. Bearing in mind that we need to be shorter today, I will address only those points which are new and will not repeat what I was talking about previously on this issue at middays. So first of all, factual correction, we never said that we are, what we are not commenting actually, so what we are not commenting on is the content of the discussions. We always are happy to share the information about the agenda as we have done until now. And when it comes to the agenda of today's meeting, because there are chief negotiators from Kosovo and Serbia back in town today to take forward another round of negotiations, as was agreed during the last meeting last Monday on the 7th September by the President Vučić and Prime Minister Hoti. They agreed to follow up on their discussions on settlement of mutual financial claims and arrangements for non-majority community at the expert and chief negotiators level in the forthcoming meetings. As these topics are very complex, both parties agreed earlier this week to dedicate the full meeting today to the issue of the settlement of mutual financial claims, and as a follow-up meeting on the arrangements for the non-majority communities, which will take place in the coming days. So this is something what both parties agreed, and this is what is happening today. And on your third point, the association, I can only recall that in 2013, Kosovo entered into an agreement to establish the association or community of Serb municipalities. This agreement was concluded in good faith by all parties involved, and it has been never cancelled or annulled. And this agreement was ratified by the Assembly with 2/3 majority. And by doing so, Kosovo undertook an international obligation to implement this agreement. So it is up to Kosovo to propose a way forward to implement this agreement.
Thank you, Peter. In view of the very limited time we still have left, I would like to see if there is any other question on this topic before we move on to other topics. Nick, I know your question is on Brexit. Camille, Is it on this, the dialogue between Kosovo and Serbia? Your mic source is wrong, is not the right one. So I see that Augustine has a question on this. Augustine, go ahead. And then we'll move to Brexit.
Bah, ça, je peux pas poser ma question.
Augustine, please go ahead. This is on this. Go ahead, Augustine.
Yeah, do you hear me now?
Yes, please be brief.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's very brief. Peter, just to clarify, you are using the wording non-majority communities. Why is this a topic in the dialogue, and can you make a clear definition that it is not about other non-majority communities, because as you might know, the Kosovo Serbs are not the only non-majority community. And do you give the right to Belgrade then to represent all other communities in Kosovo that are not majority communities and are not Serbs? Thank you.
Again, very briefly on the logistics, because I consider this more a logistical question. We announced the agenda as it is agreed by both sides. The names of the topics as they are put on the table and agreed by both of them. And that's essentially everything I can say about this.
Okay, thank you. I will take one last question on external affairs. Nicolas, je vois que tu as une question sur la Libye pour Peter. Vas-y.
Oui, tout à fait. Vous m'entendez?
Absolument, vas-y.
Absolument, vas-y. Oui. Bonjour Peter, Nicolas Gros-Verret, donc B2, Sud-Ouest. J'avais une petite question sur la Libye, sur l'opération Irini. Je ne sais pas si tu as déjà répondu, donc je me permets de poser la question. Je voulais savoir si le navire qui avait été intercepté par les bateaux de Irini, il y avait eu finalement un accord entre les États membres pour déterminer le pays qui allait effectuer le contrôle des armes de ce navire. J'ai cru comprendre que le navire était dérouté vers la Grèce finalement. Est-ce que tu pourrais me confirmer cela? Deuxième point, sur toujours l'opération Irini, elle manquait de moyens jusqu'à présent. Est-ce que cette question est résolue ou est en train d'être résolue pour permettre d'avoir plus de moyens navals et aériens pour l'opération? Merci beaucoup.
Merci Nicolas. La première question, c'est plus pour les collègues de l'opération Irini parce que c'est une chose opérationnelle. Et la deuxième question, oui, ce sera le sujet de deuxième conférence pour la génération des forces, ou en anglais Force Generation Conference. Donc c'est un effort qui continue et nous sommes intéressés à avoir plus de moyens pour l'opération parce que on a besoin d'avoir les 100% des moyens qui sont nécessaires pour avoir cette opération très effective et efficace. Merci.
Nicolas, un bref follow-up, s'il te plaît, mais bref. Désolé.
Désolé. Oui, en deux mots sur le navire, je comprends très bien que tu me renvoies sur Irini. Le problème, c'est qu'Irini renvoie sur le niveau politique pour le contrôle du navire. Apparemment, c'est une question politique, donc c'est pour ça que je te posais la question. Ok, d'accord, on va vérifier et je veux retourner à vous après avec une réponse bilatérale.
Merci beaucoup. So we close the Foreign Affairs chapter and I move to Nick, who had a question on Brexit.
Bonjour, Eric. Thank you very much for the question. The President yesterday said that the EU would never backtrack on the withdrawal agreement, and a short time afterwards, Boris Johnson, the British Prime Minister, was asked if he thought that the EU was negotiating in good faith, and he replied, "I don't believe they are." Firstly, could the Commission reply to that serious allegation? And secondly, we hear that Boris Johnson's government and some Tory MPs who weren't happy about some parts of the UK bill seem to have reached an agreement. If that is the case, how at all does that affect or change the EU's position? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nick, for your question. As you know, we have the habit of not commenting on comments by third parties. Now, obviously, what I can say more generally is that I can point to our hundreds, literally hundreds, of international agreements signed with very, very different third parties of all kinds. And I think that they testify to, as I think you say in English, a rather splendid track record when it comes to carrying out negotiations in good faith, and indeed even concluding them. So what I would simply do is ask you to go and talk to those third parties with whom we have signed these agreements, and I'm sure that they will testify to the quality of our negotiation. And I think that Michel Barnier showed in the context of the negotiations of the withdrawal agreement that even on extremely complex and politically sensitive issues, the Commission and indeed the EU negotiate in perfectly good faith. On your second question, we are not going to get into the internal discussions and agreements that take place between the government of the United Kingdom and the Parliament. We have, as you know, set out a position extremely clearly. It is in our statement, and it relates to those clauses being withdrawn from the law. That position has not changed, and we have asked the United Kingdom to do this at the earliest possible convenience and by the end of September at the latest. That has not changed. Right. With that, I would like to close the midday briefing for today, but we have more on offer for you today, and we will now move in a few minutes to the press conference by Vice President Timmermans and Commissioner Simpson, and then the technical briefing on the extremely important issue of our climate strategy, in particular with the time horizon of 2030. Thank you very much, and see you tomorrow.